Epstein and Junkermann, September 1, 2002, the secret senators in the Wexner War on Iraq. While all the very talented people on the independent news scene were uncovering new information about the glamorous Nicole Junkermann, I was focused on the one question that remained unanswered from my article. What were Jeffrey Epstein and Nicole Junkermann doing in the United Kingdom, from landing on August 31, 2002 until leaving on the 2nd of September? There were so many clues to their whereabouts from a very limited amount of information. They had flown in on Epstein's private jet from Paris-Le Bourget Airport, and they had chosen to land at Birmingham Airport. So why Birmingham? Britain is littered with viable airports for a billionaire to land his swanky jet. Birmingham, in 2002, was not renowned for being a hangout of the glamorous, and often seedy, billionaires of the world. I would sift through thousands of old archived websites trying to locate any blip on the radar. Maybe I'd uncover some little story in a local newspaper reporting a misplaced boast from a talkative cohort, but the hunt was fruitless. I would eventually find out that I was never going to discover anything related to the night in question in the press. This was a very secret meeting. I had succeeded in narrowing down a search area, which would prove to be correct, but without something truly miraculous happening, I felt like I was doomed to never know the answer. I put a tweet out saying that I was still looking for Epstein and Junkermann's location on the 1st of September 2002, but in reality I was losing hope. I had done my best to get the question out into the public arena. If the answer was to be found, then the universe would have to provide it. On this occasion, the telephone was the universe's preferred method of communication. From this point on, I must protect my sources. So, I'm going to start by giving you a basic roundup of the events of that weekend. Then we can go into each of the details I was told, and any evidence corroborating the story. The slightly polished dramatization. Jeffrey Epstein and Nicole Junkermann landed at Birmingham Airport, located southeast of the United Kingdom's second biggest city, on the afternoon of Saturday, August 31, 2002. They were met by a pre-arranged helicopter pilot, most likely a representative of the Bristol Group. They were then flown 25 miles south to a secluded country house in the stunningly beautiful Warwickshire countryside. If they were to fly another 20 miles southeast, then they would see Blenheim Palace, principal residence of the Dukes of Marlborough, and en route they would fly over Chipping Norton. The surrounding areas are where some of the most famous of the British-based elites live. Ex-Prime Minister David Cameron would go riding with Murdoch executive Rebecca Brooks in the fields below. Elizabeth Murdoch, second-born daughter of Rupert Murdoch, has a grand residence nearby, along with Ben Kingsley, Patrick Stewart, Jeremy Clarkson, and of course Princess Anne is just around the corner. They would have even been able to see the church where Theresa May's father used to give his sermons as Vicar of Instone. Here on the borderlands of Oxfordshire, Gloucestershire, and Warwickshire, they were in amongst the establishment elite. They landed at a relatively recently installed helipad near the highest point in Warwickshire County. They were in Ilmington, which was once the seat of the Canning family, until the death of Robert Canning in 1848. Situated on the northeastern cusp of the scenic Cotswolds, the Grade II listed building where they would be staying is Foxcote House, and was purchased by Leslie and Abigail Wexner in 1997. The two best rooms in the 11-bedroom house were already taken by more important people, so they would have had to settle for the less grandiose quarters. Sunday, September 1st was the perfect weather for such an occasion, and the small group spent the day hunting. Later on that night, Jeffrey Epstein would walk into the main house to greet the waiting senators with a girl on each arm. On his right arm was a dazzlingly beautiful brunette, and on his left arm was a stunning Nicole Junkermann. The majority of the security men were moonlighting British police, and the two guests who were the center of attention were both sitting United States senators. This very small gathering wouldn't be all fun and games. America was on its way to war. In just over a week's time it would be the first anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, and exactly 1 month later Joint Resolution 114 would be voted on by those same senators. The vote to go to war with Iraq, based on a dodgy dossier of exaggerated and manipulated information, who originally invited the senators to the English hunting retreat is unclear, but this would be the last chance for them to have such a private meeting, as the following Tuesday the senators would return to the Senate after their summer recess. On Sunday evening, the senators spent some time panicking about the lack of internet access and their inability to access their emails. They were meant to be in constant communication with their people in Washington. There was no wireless internet at Foxcode at this point in history, just a classic dial-up modem. They would only be able to access their email accounts via the solitary computer in the house. That computer was in an office near the kitchens, but the internet wasn't working. They had to call out an IT specialist late on Sunday night to get their internet up and running. And after the problem was solved, and the emails were retrieved, the night would continue on as planned. The following day, on Monday, September 2, 2002, Epstein and Junkermann were flown back to Birmingham Airport by helicopter, where they would soon return to Paris. Nicole and Jeffrey went their separate ways. The next day, Epstein would fly from Paris with Jean-Luc Brunel, Sarah Kellen, and Cindy Lopez. Information breakdown. The account above is what I can extrapolate from the information which I received. It was now a matter of verifying the information given and starting the hunt for the unnamed US senators. Here's the reported details. The helicopter firm used was Bristow's. The meeting was held at Foxcode House, Warwickshire. 2 United States senators were present. Luntz Wexner and Abigail Wexner may not have been present. All the talk was about the invasion of Iraq. It was a supposed hunting trip. Epstein walked into the main house on Sunday with a woman on each arm. The brunette was not identified, but the blonde was identified as Nicole Junkermann. The internet issue was a major concern. An outside IT specialist was brought in late Sunday night. The majority of the security were moonlighting British cops. Firstly, the helicopter firm Bristow's does fly out of Birmingham Airport. Also, Foxcode House is owned by the Wexner family, with Wexner's wife, Abigail, being named on official UK company's house records as director of the hunting business. As the Telegraph reported in 2015, Mr. Wexner has largely succeeded in keeping his ownership of Foxcode out of the public eye despite the fact that he bought the estate 18 years ago for about £3 million. But I could not find a public record advertising the presence of US senators in the locality, near those dates. This visit could well have been considered a private one for all involved. 2 days later, on September 3, 2002, the United States Senate continued its 107th Congress. The senators and security. I went from trying to find out where 2 people were located on 1st of September 2002, to attempting to identify the whereabouts of the 100 sitting senators on that same day. The Wexners could not be identified as present, so the senators seem to have been meeting with Epstein directly. That seriously narrows down the candidates. I still looked at each senator individually. Joe Biden was at a rally on August 31st, and on September 3, 2002 the Baltimore Sun reported Joseph Biden Sr., 86, the father of Delaware Senator Joseph R. Biden Jr., died early yesterday at his son's home in suburban Wilmington, Delaware. He had been in failing health in recent weeks. It seemed Biden was the first to be scratched off the list. Jean Carnahan had been shooting that weekend as her website advertised. Senator Carnahan participated in the annual fish fry and clay pigeon shoot in Missouri on August 30, 2002. Banker John Curzini of New Jersey was linked later on with Wexner via his support for Hillel. Curzini's then ally and fellow New Jersey Democrat, Robert G. Torricelli, was under the microscope for corruption allegations. I went through the 100 senators, but in the end there were too many slippery fish in this pond for me to go it alone. I was able to locate Hillary Clinton's whereabouts, and then Pete Domenici, but I always knew who my number 1 suspect was, so I would save him for last. When I first found out the location of Epstein and Junkermann, I assumed that at least one of the Wexners would have been present. That left all possibilities to the identities of the senators open, as Abigail supported a wide selection of Democrats and Leslie nearly always backed various Republicans. But Epstein was never interested in supporting little candidates. He saw himself as a kingmaker of sorts. His notable support of Bill Clinton had seen his influence grow, and I believe that he craved more of the same. There were only 2 sitting senators in this period who we know Epstein was in personal contact with. Ted Kennedy and John Kerry were both listed in Epstein's Little Black Book, and at this time in American political history, everyone was talking about Senator John Kerry challenging George Bush in the 2004 presidential elections. Kerry was also still openly receiving financial support from Jeffrey Epstein, with several donations being recorded between 1991 and 2002. John Kerry is also famous for his love of hunting, a hobby the Massachusetts politician would heavily advertise over the next few years before he challenged the incumbent Republican president, George W. Bush. However, there are other likely suspects including New York's Chuck Schumer and New Mexico's Jeff Bingaman, who both received public funding from Epstein. The information on the security detail I found very interesting. All the British security were specifically reported as being either UK police or former UK officers. In Epstein's famous Little Black Book there is an entry for Scotland Yard. Were these officers supplied by the Met, or were they officially working for a private firm? The policemen who were present should face questions about such an event. The other security were described as like Secret Service, and if there were 2 US senators present then they may well have brought a very small security detail. If this is so, there should be some form of official record of this visit somewhere in Washington, D.C. The Wexner War on Iraq. While Epstein and Junkermann were entertaining United States senators at Leigh Wexner's British hunting ground, Washington, D.C. was abuzz with activity. The start of the new political season was just beginning and there was much to do. On September 3, 2002, the freshly vacationed senators would vote on the confirmation of Terrence F. McVeary, of Pennsylvania, to be a United States District Judge. The Amber Alert Bill was introduced and passed. It was also the beginning of preparations towards the Iraq War, before it had even been voted on by the Senate. Max Baucus, who was then chairman of the Committee on Finance, put out a press release on 3 September entitled, "Baucus schedules a markup of a substitute for H.R. 5063, Armed Forces Tax Fairness Act of 2002. This was the first bill to prepare for the Iraq War. It gave tax incentives to US troops, so as to make war pay. Only one sitting Republican Party member would vote against the war, he would be joined by one independent and only 21 Democrats. Luntz Wexner would be a major force in pushing for the war with Iraq. A document leaked in 2003 entitled, Luntz Wexner Analysis, Israeli Communications Priorities 2003, commissioned and produced by the Wexner Foundation, should be studied in universities globally as a perfect example of elite state propaganda. On its opening page it states, the fact that Israel has remained relatively silent for the 3 months preceding the war and for the 3 weeks of the war was absolutely the correct strategy, and according to all the polling done, it worked. The paper is a quick guide to linking Israel's ongoing cooperation with the US military as a positive aspect of the Iraq War. But the paper soon descends into a propaganda aid in the defeat of any arguments defending the embattled Palestinian people. It is a must-read document for all those who enjoy anything Orwellian. In 2003, there was one reporter who was seriously ahead of the game. On August 1, 2003, Bob Fitrakis published an article on his freepress.org website entitled The Wexner War. In it he says, when the Wexner Analysis report was leaked, it caused a stir but no questioning of Wexner's little explored relationships with Epstein and Fisher. Frank Luntz, the Republican Party pollster and spin doctor, prepared the Wexner Analysis. Lutz's report essentially outlines a political PR campaign as the post-war dust settles over the Iraqi desert. Fitrakis finishes his enthralling article by stating, lobbying groups like the Mega Group and government insiders like Wolfowitz and Richard Pearl are engaged in a systematic campaign to identify Israeli national security interests with US military and security interests. The Wexner Analysis merely documents this extensive, often covert campaign, that deserves public debate and democratic discourse, not secret PR campaigns. Maybe Epstein was simply lobbying the senators for his pal, and probable fellow Mossad agent, Leslie Wexner. Conclusion. Can I say that I've identified the location of Jeffrey Epstein and Nicole Junkermann on September 1, 2002? Probably. I have no reason to believe that my source intended to deceive me. I found the person to be somebody who wished to get this story off their proverbial chest. Many of the claims could be verified. That is all the information that I've been able to gather so far, and it seems to suggest a hidden world of influencing, warmongering, and an out-of-control, but focused, Israeli propaganda machine. My Junkermann article has taught me a few important things. There are thousands of people who want to reveal the truth. They're being attacked relentlessly for trying. The article had some collateral damage. I'm sorry to the folks of Vote.com, if I am really responsible for your site being cyber attacked and shut down for posting. I salute thee, fallen soldiers. The most important thing that I've learnt was my specific place in investigative journalism. I am here to uncover the topsoil of an intriguing story, and then leave it up to others to finish the digging. So, for now, I shall leave you all in the world which existed on September 1st, 2002. I've not finished, I just require some new soil to turn. P.S. I must say a massive thank you to the Richie Allen Show, Jason Burmis, Tony Goslin and the Opperman Report. They all saw how important the Junkermann connection was. Without their exposure, and all the wonderful people who helped share the article and participate in the investigation, I would have been very much alone right now. It is up to all of us to support the independent media. It is here that you will get the news which the mainstream media would prefer you didn't know. PPS. A small footnote on the donations of Les and Abigail Wexner. Records from the Federal Election Commission show that Leslie and Abigail Wexner had made many donations before and after September 1, 2002 to Democratic and Republican political organizations. But their donations to individuals were rarer. Between the period of September 27, 2000 and June 21, 2004 they gave personal donations to 5 of the 100 senators who were sitting in September 2002. Those 5 were Max Baucus, Mike DeWine, Trent Lott, Arlen Specter, and George Voinovich. The 2 closest payments to the date in question were to Montana Democrat Max Baucus and Ohio Republican George Voinovich from Abigail Wexner and Les Wexner respectively. But even more fascinating is the $5,000 donation given on the Saturday night of the event. Abigail Wexner donated the funds to the Ohio Democratic Party on August 31, 2002. My hunch is that the 2 senators were John Kerry and Mike DeWine, but I am unable to back that up with evidence. At least for the moment.